Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, hockey fans. It is a blustery 3 degrees Celsius, 38 degrees Fahrenheit in gray little Bridgewater, Nova Scotia today. My name is Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and welcome to the Friday, April 15th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. So last night we had 4 excellent Game 1s kicking off their respective series. It was another late night for us hockey fans. We're going to have to get used to those for the next couple of weeks. Let's get right into our game reviews. We're going to start in the Eastern Conference. The Philadelphia Flyers traveling to Washington to take on the Capitals in Game 1 of their series. Final score here, you would expect a bit of a shootout, maybe a bunch of goals for Washington with that great offense. This game ended 2-0. It was 2-0 for the home side Capitals. Shots in this game, a convincing 31-19 for Washington. Now, most of this first period was playing fairly like I thought it would play out. I mean, we kind of knew that Philadelphia, or at least I kind of knew, Philadelphia is going to give Washington problems. And that 5-on-5 for the majority of that first period, when it was 5-on-5, was very back and forth. That Philadelphia forecheck is going to be something that Washington is going to have to deal with all series long. The Flyers, with that forecheck, do manage to draw the game's first 3 penalties. Now, Washington's penalty kill, unfortunately for the Flyers, was great. There was no damage done on those, but if Philadelphia can keep that up, can keep drawing those penalties, I think eventually they will find success on the power play. Just didn't happen in Game 1. Second period, Washington comes out flying. They get an early power play. They record the first 7 shots of the period. The Flyers, unfortunately, fell kind of out of the drawing penalty game and fell into the taking penalty game. The Flyers take 3 of the 4 penalties in the second period. The Capitals pick up their physicality. They force the Flyers into some bad situations. And before you know it, 16:21 of the second period opens our scoring. A Washington power play goal by defenseman John Carlson. Johansson and Backstrom pick up the assists on the deflection from Carlson, and all of a sudden, 1-0 Washington. The penalty troubles continue for Philadelphia getting into the third period. They take a bad too many men on the ice penalty, can't take those in the playoffs. They take a high stick, but even 5-on-5, the second half of this game was dictated by the Washington Capitals and their puck control. It was a thing of beauty. It was an interesting, really interesting second half of this game to watch because it was like Philadelphia literally could not get the puck. Turning point in this game, Washington finally gives a little bit of momentum back. Philly grabs a little bit of momentum because the Caps are taking a penalty. It's going to send Philly to the power play, except that Wayne Simmonds shoots himself in the foot. Simmonds runs over. It was, a very questionable hit. Not a great hit, obviously, from the Capitals player, which is why they got the penalty drawn in the first place. But Simmonds comes over, and it was Wilson who made the hit. And he comes over to Wilson, and he instigates a fight. I'm sorry. Not only are you about to send your team to the power play, you're your team's best power play player. I don't think I'm jumping off a cliff and saying that Wayne Simmonds is probably the most dangerous power play threat that the Flyers have. So Simmonds is the one that goes over. He instigates a fight with Wilson, takes an instigator penalty, and kills the power play. Whether you agree or disagree with whether it should have been a penalty or not, or the kind of penalty that it was, the way that these things got called, Wayne Simmonds, it doesn't kill the fact that Wayne Simmonds has got to be more disciplined than that, especially in a game that you're losing when you're about to get a power play. And then what happens very short time later, I think while Wayne Simmonds is still in the penalty box, I believe they hadn't quite come out yet, 16:36 of the third period, Washington doubles their lead. Jay Beagle from Johansson, who picked up a turnover, sent Jay Beagle in, wrist shot, boom, beats Steve Mason. Now it's 2-0. The game at that point basically out of reach. There was a bit of a late hit by Shen, I believe it was, literally 5 seconds left in the game, draws a scuffle at the end of the game. Nothing really came from it, but it could be an indication of things to come in this series. You could see the physicality pick up. There's a little bit of bad blood here, so you could see that moving forward. Very undisciplined game by both of these teams. The teams combined for 38 penalty minutes, 16 total penalties, 9 of those by Philadelphia. Look, you're the Wild Card 2 team. You're playing the President's Trophy winning Washington Capitals. Maybe don't take 9 penalties. Be physical, but be disciplined. In any case, Capitals take Game 1 on home ice. We'll keep it in the Eastern Conference and move to Game 1 between the Islanders and the Panthers in Florida. This game ended 5-4 Islanders. A lot more scoring than I thought we were going to have in this game, and a lot more just offense in general. Shots in this game, 46-26 for Florida. Thomas Greiss got peppered, and for the most part, was up to the challenge, especially at the end of the game. Shots come early, shots come often. The teams combined for 27 of those shots in the first period. I'm watching this and I think this feels like it's going to be a sloppy game. You know what I mean? Like this game feels right from the first opening faceoff. There's nerves and you can just feel it watching the game. And 2 minutes in, a minute and 55 actually into the first period, Florida opens the scoring. Teddy Purcell tips home the Yuri Hudler pass. Kulikov gets the other assist, and Florida on home ice scores in the first 2 minutes. The building is loud. All the momentum in the world, and you look at it and you think, uh-oh, here comes, how's that going to work for Thomas Greiss's momentum and confidence and everything like that? To Thomas Greiss's credit, he basically buckled down, but there's a lot more offense to come. After that first goal, the Islanders pick up their physicality, they pick up their forecheck, they start skating harder, and whenever that happens, good things tend to happen. 6 minutes and 39 seconds into the first period, Islanders tie the game. You'll sense a theme as we move forward. Brock Nelson taking the stretch pass from Strome and snapping it home behind Luongo. Game is tied at 1. Later on in the first period, Cal Clutterbuck and Jonathan Huberdeau get a little too friendly in the corner. Extra 2 minutes there for Clutterbuck, and Florida makes them pay for it. 13:51 of the first. Florida on the power play. UC Jokinen tips home the point shot from Campbell, the other assist going to Riley Smith, who had himself a pretty good game for the Panthers, and the Panthers are now up 2-1. Okay, you've taken the lead on home ice. You got all the momentum. Oh, good Branson. Why would you do that? Good Branson takes a hooking penalty on Kyle Okposo, sends the Islanders to the power play, and you can guess where I'm going with this. 16:46 of the first, the Islanders on the power play. Franz Nielsen tips home a pass from John Tavares. A lot of tips in this game. Nick Leddy on the back end gets the other assist. We are tied again. For the second time in the game, the Islanders come back to tie it. Bear in mind, this is all in the first period. Your first period ends tied at 2, and you think, this is going to be a fun rest of the game. Florida applies a lot of pressure to open the second period, and they get their second goal from inside the first 2 minutes of a period. Minute 31 into the second, Florida, Riley Smith, as I mentioned, Petrovic and Jokinen with the assists, Smith picking up the rebound there, he pockets it, Florida is up 3-2, and you start feeling, as the period goes on, you start feeling, okay, Florida's taken this lead back. They really don't want to give it up. They must have talked about it in the room in the first intermission. And as you're watching the second period, you're thinking, okay, this looks like a different team. They look like they're clamping down a little bit. The story of this game, though, this game was literally like a pendulum. You had little momentum swings going each side. Florida tended to be getting the better of the chances, the higher volume of the chances. But in about an 8-minute span, from about 30 seconds left in the second period until, little over 6 minutes into the third, the Islanders, get a little lucky, but break this thing wide open. 19:38 of the second, last minute of the second period. The Panthers have been pretty good at getting offense early in periods. The Islanders pocket one in the last minute. John Tavares taking the cross-ice pass from Kyle Okposo. Nielsen getting the other assist there. Tavares taps it home. It is now a tied game really, really late in the period, and those things are momentum killers, and the Panthers come out for the third, and unfortunately, it just keeps going. 2:33 into the third period. Okposo from Tavares. Tavares forcing the turnover. Okposo wrists it home. 6 minutes and 1 second into the third. The Isles again with their third unanswered goal. Ryan Strome picks up the rebound from the Quinn shot. Hamonic with the other assist. And now all of a sudden, it's 5-3 Islanders, and the Panthers are just shell-shocked. The whole beginning of the third period, they were absolutely shell-shocked for the first 5-6 minutes. They looked like they couldn't skate. They looked like they had bricks in their skates. Like it just was not working out for them. Now, to their credit, Riley Smith, as I mentioned, had himself a pretty darn good game. Riley Smith definitely did not give up. 6 minutes and 56 seconds into the third, Florida pulls it back within one. Riley Smith, Jokinen and Bjugstad with the assists. Smith carries it over the line. Snipage behind Thomas Greiss. It's 5-4. I certainly didn't expect 9 goals in this game, but Florida takes a little bit of momentum back there. Back and forth for the rest of the third. Florida gets a huge break when the Islanders' Martin takes a phantom slashing penalty, just a penalty that doesn't even look like it happened. It looks like the stick just broke. Like it didn't look like he slashed him at all, but the ref looked down, saw a broken stick, called a slashing penalty. The Islanders are surviving scare after scare after scare. The Panthers are pressing hard at this point in the last half of the third period. They take a momentum-killing penalty at 16:56 inside the last 4 minutes of a game that you're down by a goal. Ouch. Like, that hurts. That's awful. They kill that off. They're going last minute of the game. Thomas Greiss makes a game-saving stop in the last minute with Florida's net empty, 6-on-5. What a save by Greiss. It was unbelievable. Just coming across the crease, making a big save. The puck's just laying there, and it gets flicked away. Just a huge save by Thomas Greiss. That saved the game, and that was your game. The Islanders win it 5-4. Super exciting game. Florida with all the chances in the world. I was critical about the idea of, how's Thomas Greiss going to react? For the most part, he was fairly okay. You know, you take out the first 2 minutes of those first two periods, I thought he was great, especially against 46 shots. So big ups to Greiss. We'll see if he can repeat in game 2, but for this game, the Islanders come away with a win in Florida. Let's move into the Western Conference now as the Wildcard 2 versus Central 1 matchup was kicking off. Minnesota traveling to Dallas to take on the Stars. Game 1 of that series. Stars win this game 4-0. It was not close for the majority of this game. Shots were 32-22 Dallas. The teams trade first period power plays. Neither one of them can really do anything with it. The Stars recorded the first 5 shots of the game, so the shots were 5-0. Wild still had 0 shots through 11 minutes plus in this first period. And in perfect honesty, in this first period, it was looking like a kid trying to wrestle with his dad. Like, the Wild just had nothing. Shots at the end of the first period were 14-2 for Dallas. And if it wasn't for Devin Dubnyk, this game could have been 2 or 3-0 at the end of the first. The Wild take a bad delay of game penalty. Also a bad idea to take penalties when you're getting dominated. Lots of shots by the Stars, nothing getting behind them. Minnesota, for their part too, really selling out to keep this game scoreless. 13 blocked shots in the first period alone. The Wild, I'm sure, are black and blue this morning. 3:53 into the second period, we finally have an opening to the scoring. Faksa for the Stars. Assist going to Ales Hemsky, just sniping it from the slot. That was the Stars' 17th shot of the game. They finally connect on one. Boom, it's 1-0 Dallas. Wild are trying to pick up their offensive play here a little bit in the second period. They get 5 shots in the first 8 minutes in the second, which is certainly a far cry better than they did in the first. Unfortunately, Dallas again. 12-17 into the second period. Dallas doubles their lead. Jason Spezza, I told you about Jason Spezza. Assists going to Eves and Ben. A big snapshot there on the rush. Beats Dubnyk glove high. We got a 2-0 lead now for the Stars. Move to late in the second period. Stars take an elbowing penalty really late in the period. Awesome. Momentum from Minnesota. This is what they need. And they literally give it right back on the power play, no less. They take their own elbowing penalty to kill their power play, give Dallas a little bit of power play time towards the end of the second, beginning of the third. That's a momentum killer right there. You get an opportunity, just like in the Philadelphia game, you get an opportunity and you literally hand it right back to them. Can't do that, especially when you're losing. Dallas plays a little more defensively to start the third period, and again, it's like a kid trying to wrestle with his dad. The Wild have no forecheck whatsoever. They really can't get anything going. It's not that Dallas is this unbelievable defensive team. They're certainly not, but they looked unbelievable at points last night against Minnesota. Third period wears on. Both teams are kind of accumulating some shots here, but very few of them are scoring chances. And the majority of the scoring chances are going towards the side of the ice that's already in the lead. Dallas is getting the majority of those scoring chances. 14-16 into the third period. The Wild putting Dallas on the power play again, and they connect. Eaves from Spezza and Ben. Eaves picking up the rebound on the Spezza point shot. Boom. Now it's 3-0. The Wild pull their goaltender with 4 minutes and 40 seconds left in the third period. Who's coaching them? Waugh? But they pull Dubnyk. They put him on the bench. And 40 seconds later, 16 minutes into the third period, an empty net goal for Dallas. Jamie Benn unassisted. Boom, it's 4-0. That's the game. Kari Lehtinen, much maligned, it seems, inside the Stars fan base. They're really concerned about his sort of playoff acumen there. A lot of people saying it shouldn't have been Lehtinen getting the start in this game. He responds to that with a 22-save shutout. Like, that's huge for that guy to pick up the shutout and maybe shut up a couple of the naysayers. Dallas wins it 4-0. Very convincing win for them. They take a 1-0 series lead. Which leads us to our finale, Western Conference. San Jose Sharks traveling to LA to take on the Kings, game 1 of their series. The Sharks pull off a huge 4-3 victory on LA's home ice. Shots were 24-23 for the Kings. The Kings' forecheck looking really, really strong early in this game, which leads to, inside the first 3 minutes, 2:53 into the first, Kings get on the board. Jake Muzzin from behind the net banks it off of a Sharks player. I can't remember who it was. I think it was Thomas Hertl. Muzzin banks it in off of Hertl. Lucic and Pearson pick up the assists. The Kings get a fortuitous bounce, and they take a 1-0 lead. Shortly after the goal, a guy you don't expect to see taking penalties, Anze Kopitar, takes a bad interference penalty very shortly after the goal, and what would you know? Sharks on the power play. 6:25 into the first, Joe Pavelski with a sick little one-timer off the stick of Brent Burns. Boom, Pavelski puts them up. Logan Couture picking up the other assist. We have got ourselves a tie game. As the first period wears on and into the second, I'm actually quite impressed by the way San Jose is playing for the most part. They still show some flashes of that old, unpredictable San Jose, but for the most part, they're playing pretty well and they're getting chances. Jonathan Quick had to be Jonathan Quick. He made several saves that kept this game tied. The numbers looked fairly even through the first period and into the beginning of the second. Los Angeles, admittedly, when they have the puck, they do feel like the more dangerous team, but it's San Jose who picks up the second goal, breaks the tie. 6:50 into the second period, Sharks score, it's Brent Burns. Burns deflecting the wrist shot from the point from Joel Ward. Burns gets the Sharks on the board, gives them the lead. Shortly after Joel Ward made a good play to put the puck on the net, he pulls a Kopitar and takes an interference penalty almost immediately after that goal. And you can tell where this is going. 7 minutes and 30 seconds into the second period, Kings on the power play. Jeff Carter deflects the pass from Milan Lucic again. Kopitar picking up the other assist. The Kings have tied the game. They've got momentum going. Both of these teams, though, they're starting to get into more penalty trouble as the game goes on. More penalties, more penalties, more penalties. The Kings take a penalty. They're shorthanded, but 17-18 into the second period, the Kings shorthanded. Lewis unassisted on another friggin' shorthanded 2-on-1. Come on. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to keep harping on this, but like it's the playoffs. How do you give up a shorthanded 2-on-1 in the playoffs? Like, no, just stop. It's every time it happens, it's going to be frustrating, and every time there's a goal scored, I'm going to be talking about it. So you're going to have to get used to that. It was just very, very frustrating to see things like that. And I get it. Like, the Sharks were buzzing on their power play. Everybody had dead legs. They just couldn't keep up with Lewis, whose legs were maybe just a little bit fresher. So I get it. But like, oh my God, it's the friggin' playoffs, guys. You can't, I don't know, that stuff to me is just unexcusable. Luckily, on the same power play, 30 seconds later, 17:48 in the second, Sharks connect. Tomas Hertl making up for his error earlier. Bit of a scramble in front of the net. Hertl gets the rebound. He pockets it. Assists go to Ward and Donskoy. San Jose has tied this game. Heading into the third period, they got to be feeling good about themselves. Then they're really going to be feeling good about themselves to start the third. Just 17 seconds into the third period, Joe Pavelski again behind the net, little wraparound, tucks it in behind Jonathan Quick. Braun picks up the other assist there. Joe Pavelski puts the Sharks up and puts them up for good. We didn't know that until later. Logan Couture, later on in the period, a brilliant, like, partial breakaway chance, misses the net with the shot. That could have iced it. After that 4-3 goal, Los Angeles is, like, scrambling. It's the first time in a long time I've seen the Kings panic, which I thought was very interesting. The Kings directed or attempted 27 shots in the third period after that 4-3 goal. The Sharks hold their ground, get a lot of blocked shots, a lot of tips, miss the nets, things like that. LA was coming on strong, but the Sharks hold on. Sharks win 4-3 in enemy territory to take a 1-0 lead on the Kings. So it looks like the NHL was nice and decided not to break any real significant news through the night or while I've been recording the podcast. So let's dip right into those game previews for tonight. We have another 4-game set on tap for tonight. Detroit and Tampa Bay, Game 2, that's where we're going to start. This series, 1-0 Tampa Bay. This game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's available on CBC and CNBC in the States. Your likely goaltending matchup, Ben Bishop, obviously, for Tampa Bay. There is a bit of a question mark for the Detroit net. I imagine they probably stick with Howard, but I'm not going to totally discount the possibility that we see Peter Mrazek, because Howard, I mean, he only gave up 3 goals, so he wasn't like he was bad, but at the same time, he did look a little shaky at certain points. There's a couple of those goals that I'm sure he would like to have back, so you never know. There's a possibility. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying there's a possibility maybe we might see Mrazek for Game 2. One thing I'm really going to be interested to see as this game progresses is kind of the second act here for guys like Justin Abdelkader and Jonathan Drouin, who may not have hit, well, Abdelkader hit the score sheet, but a guy like Drouin especially, who didn't hit the score sheet, almost did, except for that offside goal. But I'm really interested to see what is coming from these two players, because moreover to what they did on the score sheet, they really got under their respective opponent's skin. Like, I don't think Abdelkader has any friends in that Lightning locker room, and ditto for Drouin in the Red Wings locker room. I think there's a lot of animosity here, and I'm really interested to see what Abdelkader and Drouin have planned for the second act tonight. Something that Tampa Bay really proved to me in that first game, and let's see if they can repeat it again here in Game 2. They proved to me in the first game that they can generate offense without Stamkos. Now, it hurts not having Stamkos in the lineup. Nobody would ever say like, it's fine. But it hurt, obviously it hurts to not have him in there. But I'm really interested to see if they can do it again. They did prove it to me in Game 1. They're like, look, we're more than just Stamkos. We've got secondary scoring. We can generate. We got a guy like Kucherov, who is turning into a superstar right before our eyes, even though it's only one game. So you never know. Maybe he doesn't score at all for the rest of the playoffs, and I look like an idiot. But it won't be the first time, certainly won't be the last. But a guy like Kucherov has got to lead the way in the absence of a guy like Stamkos. So they did prove that they could get some offense there without a guy like Stamkos. Let's see if they can do it again. Whoever the Red Wings do go with between the pipes tonight, it'll likely be Jimmy Howard. I don't think he did enough in that game to lose the starting spot. I'm just saying I'm not 100% willing to say that you won't see Mrazek. But whoever is in net for Detroit does need to step up their game. And Detroit needs to step up their game defensively. If it means playing like a 1-2-2 and sort of playing a modified trap or something like that, they need to do something to keep Tampa Bay at bay. No pun intended. That's got to be focus number one, because you know you're not going to beat Ben Bishop a lot. As a matter of fact, beating him twice is, you got to feel pretty good about that. But you know you're not going to beat him a lot. You got to maybe try to play a 2-1 game or play even a 1-0 game. You're trying to keep this as low scoring as you possibly can and keep Tampa Bay at bay. See if Tampa Bay will punch themselves out, and then at that point, then kind of develop your counterattack. I know it's hard to match lines, obviously, when you're the visiting team, but it's going to be really important, I think, for Detroit. They don't want to get into a shootout with Tampa Bay, because Tampa Bay's got a lot more bullets in the chamber. As far as a prediction goes, I feel like Detroit needs to win this game. I don't think Tampa Bay needs to win this game. If you go back to Detroit tied, whatever, you got to feel at least decent about that. I know you always want to keep home ice advantage, but I feel like Detroit's going to be the hungrier team here. I'm going to take Detroit by a score of 3-1. I think the third goal is an empty netter. I like Detroit to win this game, tie this series, heading back to the Motor City. Not much turnaround for the Islanders and the Panthers. They are right back at it again tonight. That series, of course, 1-0 Islanders, as we talked about earlier. This game gets underway 7:30 p.m. Eastern, available on Sportsnet 360 in Canada, as well as the NHL Network and Sun Network and MSG Plus in the United States. So you're going to have to look for this game a little bit, but it is available to you. Likely goaltending matchup, it's going to be Greiss and Luongo again, even though they combined to get shelled for 9 goals. But, it was on 72 shots, so, whatever. Greiss and Luongo going to go again. My major question here is, I sold Luongo. I kind of hyped Luongo up prior to Game 1, and then he goes out and gives up a 5 spot in Game 1. That can't be good for the guy's confidence. Thomas Greiss going the other way, he's got to at least feel a little bit of confidence based on the fact that, yeah, sure, he gave up 4 goals, but he also had 42 saves, and he beat Roberto Luongo. So that's got to feel pretty good. But, Luongo's got to be better. 21 of 26, Luongo's got to be better. He's got to stop 26 of those, or 25, or 24. He's got to, if you give up 3 or more goals and you're not getting 30 shots, that's going to be a problem in the playoffs. So Luongo needs to play better. That's my main focus in watching this game, is seeing if Luongo comes out for Game 2, realizes he needs to be better. The defense was fine. If they gave up less than 30 shots, fine, whatever. But the goaltending, the last line of defense, has got to be better for Florida. So let's see if Luongo can pull a better performance in Game 2. I was impressed with the Islanders' secondary scoring in Game 1. You look at a guy like Ryan Strome with a couple of points. You look at Quinn and Hamonic. They got their secondary scoring going. It wasn't just Tavares, just Okposo, just Nielsen. Now look, they got their points. No, don't get me wrong, but the secondary scoring really chipped in for the Islanders, so it was a bit more of a balanced offensive game. I'm interested to see if they can repeat that in Game 2. I want to see if Florida can put them in a situation where they can neutralize the top scoring of guys like Tavares and Brock Nelson and Franz Nielsen. If they can neutralize that, let's see if the secondary scoring can do it again. As far as a prediction goes for this one, it's kind of like the last game. Florida has got to be the hungrier team. They have to come out hungry on home ice. You don't want to go to New York down 2-0. If you go to New York down 2-0, this series is done. I'm not saying New York wins both games in New York, but I bet they get a split. So you're going to come back to Florida down 3-1. at that point it's over. So I think Florida's got to be the hungrier team here. Luongo knows, I'm sure, that he needs to play better. Defensively, again, I thought they were fine. Maybe they can tighten up a little bit, but definitely Luongo's got to play better. The offense looked fine for the most part. So really it's just that back end. So if Luongo plays better, I like Florida. I think that does happen. I'm going to take Florida tonight by a score of 4-2. I like the Panthers to tie the series going to New York. The Blackhawks and the Blues will renew hostilities tonight in St. Louis. That series is 1-0 St. Louis after their 1-0 overtime win in Game 1. This game kicks off at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It's available on the primary Sportsnet networks in Canada, as well as Fox Sports and NBCSN in the United States. Your likely goaltending matchup sees Corey Crawford matching up one more time with Brian Elliott, who was fantastic in that Game 1. So my primary focus in this game obviously is going to be the goaltending matchup. Both goaltenders were excellent. I thought both goaltenders played very good games against two teams who have very good offenses. So the goaltending matchup there is going to be my focus again. If Elliott gets in trouble, do we see Jake Allen? That's a possibility. Seems like he said he's healthy now. He was on the bench, so it's possible that maybe we see Jake Allen if Elliott gets in trouble. But based off of the last game, I don't think Elliott's going to get into too much trouble. Of note, the Blackhawks, of course, will be getting Duncan Keith back from his suspension. He served the final game of it in Game 1. I can't imagine in a 1-0 overtime game, I really can't imagine that Duncan Keith would have been like the difference maker in that game, but it certainly does feel good for the Blackhawks to have Keith back. He eats up a lot of minutes. That's really going to shore up the defense, and he's going to be fresh. I mean, he hasn't played a hockey game in quite some time, so it's fresh legs, and at any point in the playoffs, fresh legs are a good thing. So Keith back in the lineup for the Blackhawks. Is he a difference maker in Game 2? I mean, I would imagine that he probably will be. You know, we start a game 0-0. You have one of the better defensemen in the league out there. It's got to make some kind of difference, but I think this is going to be another one of those games. Very tight checking, very physical, and Duncan Keith's going to help the Blackhawks in all kinds of areas there. Definitely on the physical side of things and on the defensive side of things, but he's pretty good at generating some offense too, so he could very well be a difference maker in Game 2. You want predictions? I got predictions. Chicago and St. Louis, again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but Chicago has to win this game. I've got Chicago winning this series. They ain't going to win this series if they go back to Chicago down 0-2. I honestly, I don't think it's going to happen. I can see them winning both games in Chicago, but if they're going to win this series, they need to win Game 2. They need to get momentum back on their side. They need Keith to get his skates under him real quick. They need Crawford. All they need Crawford to do is match. All Crawford's got to do is play relatively close to how he played in Game 1. I think the Blackhawks win this game. I'm going to go Chicago 2-0 over St. Louis in Game 2. I think they get the shutout on road ice, go back to Chicago with the series tied at 1. And our final game tonight sees our final series finally kick off. Nashville traveling to Anaheim to take on the Ducks. This series tied at 0. Game kicks off 10:30 p.m. Eastern. Available on CBC in Canada, as well as Fox Sports and NBCSN in the United States. Your likely goaltending matchup here, Pekka Rinne taking on either John Gibson or Frederik Andersen. And I don't know whether it's been announced yet which one it's going to be. My gut feeling tells me to go with John Gibson. And that's what I'm starting with when I think about this series. Have the Ducks found their guy? Because it seems like John Gibson is the guy. So I'm wondering if they really feel like they found their guy, or if this is going to be kind of a goaltending by committee sort of thing, like they say they're going to do in Dallas, although after Lettinen pitches a shutout, how do you not start him in Game 2? But is that what we're going to see here? Are we going to see kind of a goaltending by committee, or do you think the Ducks have found their guy in John Gibson? I think it's going to be Gibson. That's who I think they're going to go with. Philip Forsberg is the guy that I'm going to be watching throughout this entire series, because I look at this guy and he reminds me, in certain ways, actually kind of reminds me of his namesake that has played in the NHL. And I think he's one of the borderline elite players in the league. I think you give him another couple of years, I think Philip Forsberg is going to be an absolute force in this league. So I'm really interested to see what he's going to do against, one of the top defensive team in the league, the top special teams team in the league in Anaheim. I think Anaheim's going to get off to a real good start in this series. I would expect Anaheim to come up with a Game 1 victory on home ice. That's how I'm going to go with this. I'm going to say Anaheim 2-1 over Nashville. Let's get greedy. Let's say it goes to overtime. I think Rene's going to have a real good game. I like Anaheim 2-1 in overtime to take a 1-0 series lead. All right, folks, that's going to do it for the Friday, April 15th edition of the Bridgewater's Finest 2016 NHL Playoffs podcast. We had 4 games last night. We got 4 games again tonight. It's going to be a lot of sleepless nights for NHL fans over the next couple of weeks, and I am looking forward to every single one of them. Enjoy the games tonight. I'm Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, and we will see each other again tomorrow.